An RTX 2070 Super? Work the frames. Ah, you want me to work the frames, do you? I'll work the frames.
I gotta get myself some more of those power boards. I honestly thought the cable would have detached from the plastic board, but it held up. And it held up just like this GPU we've got on the desk here, which is the RTX 2070 Super W.T.F, or in Galax's terms, work the frames, where this comes out with an extra 45 megahertz boost clock over the Super Founders Edition, which already had an additional boost clock over most reference models. So we've got a card here that's geared up towards overclocking, but it's also pre-overclocked out of the factory with three 90mm RGB fans and a whole cooler that weighs in with a total size of 1.175 kilo. So it is a beefy card. It's also 31.5 centimeters long, so you'll need a pretty big case if you want to accommodate this card. Though, how does it perform? That's the most important question. Let's roll a heap of benchmarks for you guys and then come back and evaluate what other bells and whistles work the frames gives you. So coming off the back of those benchmarks at 1080p and 1440p, we can see that this was a little bit ahead of the Founders Edition just by a few FPS, but the two main sections where this card really excels is those temperatures and with the noise. We'll pull up this graph. We see here at 58% auto fan speeds, the noise was very well under control and it's running under 70 degrees. But if we up it to 60 or 80 or even 100%, the temperatures just come down so much. And a pretty cool thing about this card was when we upped the fan speeds to 80% especially, I thought the noise was actually still under control, but the temperatures were extremely low. And keep in mind, this is a 29-degree ambient environment, so it did hold up well as one of the best coolers that has come through here at the studio in terms of a GPU implementation. Now, another thing going for this card was the overclocks. Now, Galax are implementing a 7+2 phase design with this card, though when I started overclocking this thing, it was beast mode, and the memory was able to be boosted over 1000 megahertz, and then the core clocks went up to 170, and that scored us over 2.1 gigahertz stable in our benchmarks. And so this just gave us a huge boost that was honestly starting to gain to that of a 2080 Super, at least out of the box, which is definitely something that is awesome to see with a 2070 Super. And that's starting to remind me of the good old days where you could get a GTX 970 or GTX 670 and then overclock it and get close to that next model tier, of course, saving yourself some money. So the cooling solution is awesome. The power consumption is also pretty low on this card, considering it does give you more FPS than the Founders Edition, but it also does come in with a similar ballpark on those power consumption figures. But going back to those gaming benchmark numbers now, at 1080p and 1440p, depending on the game, you can see that the RTX 2070 Super is trading blows with the 5700 XT. And this was actually a little bit surprising to see, since when I tested these at launch, It was more of a case of the 5700 XT drivers haven't matured yet. And then over the last couple of months, they've matured now to the stage where I feel like it's in the same ballpark as the 2070 Super, depending on the title you pull up. For instance, if you pull up Fortnite, it's actually beating it by a little bit. But then if we go back to Strange Brigade, you're kind of seeing that picture perfect investment per frame on all these price points on all these cards. Though moving over to F1 2019 and Tom Clancy's The Division or The Division 2, depending on how you look at it, was giving you that same structure as Strange Brigade. But then moving over to For Honor showed an upset at both 1080p and 1440p. But then lastly, moving over to Shadow of the Tomb Raider showed that it was punching closer to the 2070 Super than it was to the 2060 Super. So basically now, analyzing all those gaming benchmark numbers for you, the 2070 Super is a solid performer. It's getting close to that high range, especially the 2080 Super, and especially if you overclock it. So this card right here is an exceptional example of how a cooler should be implemented, and also a VRM for that power consumption figures. So the Galax design here, I am absolutely digging it, where it's also got RGB bling added onto the side, the front, and the rear backplate too, where they've decided to go back with the older naming of Galaxy and draw a galaxy on the backplate itself, which also lights up, so you've got lighting on all three angles of your graphics card now. Though one thing I will say about the Rgb software was it's still in beta, and so I couldn't actually change the colors quite yet because the software wasn't allowing the RGBs to lock in the different colors that I wanted to change to. So I'm sure Galax will fix that very soon. Though for what it's worth, it's a gorgeous card that does a great job of cooling and of course keeping the noise down. Though going over the rear of the card, you've got 3 DisplayPort outs as well as 1 HDMI 2.0 out. And then for PCIe power connectivity, you need a 6 and 8 pin power connectors. It's also got the option for NVLink if you wish to put 2 of these in old school term SLI and get some extra performance, which if you guys haven't seen that video, I'll put the link up here, where depending on the title, you can get some massive gains. Though with all that out of the way, it now brings us to conclusion time. And this is going to be a hard one for me because I actually don't know the MSRP of this card just yet. When I look on the Galax store in America, it's not even for sale on the website just yet. And in Australia, it's coming in at roughly 900 Aussie dollars. Which if you're looking for what I consider a flagship 2070 Super, then this is definitely going to be it. It reminds me of the Hall of Fame card, just done in a different way, where the temperatures are impressive, the looks are good, and of course the overclocking of this card is phenomenal. It's the best RTX card I've had in terms of overclocking that's come here through the studio. So Galax have done a phenomenal job of that. Though when it comes to value proposition, you are going to be paying a premium for this card, and is that going to be worth it for you? That just depends on how long you want to keep the card for. Say for instance, you're putting a low noise rig together, but you still want really good temperatures and really good noise, then something like this will definitely be worth the premium. Though of course there is going to be that 5700 XT, which did show some strong performance in the charts, and it is coming close to the 2070 Super more than ever. But one thing you do get with the NVIDIA card is the better encoder if you want to get into streaming, or if you want to do a lot of recordings on your desktop and utilize the GPU recording feature, then this is going to have a superior encoder to that of AMD's Navi cards. And from what I've tested here, these cards overclock a lot better than the AMD counterparts. So you will be able to get that extra performance out of these depending on your ambient temperatures, and I'm here in 29 degrees C. And of course, the last thing you get with an RTX card like a 2070 Super is your ray tracing performance, though I haven't spoke about this a whole lot because it still is limited in the amount of titles you can implement it in. The most notable title that I was impressed with was Modern Warfare, where they had the ray trace shadows, and this extended across to the multiplayer, and the performance dips were pretty much non-existent, at least in multiplayer. So really good addition there with ray tracing, but it is still very limited in its practical implementations to gaming to date. And with that aside, let us know in the comments section below what you guys think of the RTX 2070 Super W.T.F from Galax. Are you digging the design? I definitely think it's a looker, and it's got the temperatures and the overclocks and the cooling to back it up. So that aside, we do have one more thing, and that is the question of the day from Limpe1, and they ask, what happened to getting chairs off AliExpress? And they're referring to the previous video we did. I'll put the link up here, where we looked at some Vertigear chairs, and they were basically overpriced chairs for what they were, and I kind of was leaning towards just go out and buy an office chair, which I did back in, I think, 2016, where I bought a chair off eBay, and it was a bargain chair, and I still recommend doing that for sure. I just don't know about buying a chair off AliExpress. Never done it, probably wouldn't recommend it, because international shipping on a chair, you're gonna have no luck. But yeah, definitely buy a chair online in your local area from a local distributor, and if you can get good value on that thing, assemble it yourself, then you're all good to go. In terms of chairs though, watch the video. I have a lot of recommendations in there for you guys. And with that aside, I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. If you've watched this far and you're still watching and you're enjoying the content and you're not subbed, make sure to hit that button down there and ring that bell. And I'll see you in the next tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.